James Murray is with us this morning for the government, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, which is quite a mouthful, isn't it? It's good to see you.
See you too.
Just to explain your job, you bring in the money and Darren Jones spends it.
I guess that's one way of looking at it.
Okay.
Yeah, the Chancellor takes all the decisions, but I'm in charge of, tax and HMRC, that part of it.
OK. Prime Minister wants to create an environment for investors to invest. What did we have before?
Well, what we had before was chronic instability under the previous government. And what I experienced in opposition was talking to people across Britain, around the world, who wanted to invest in the UK to get the economy growing, but they just yearned for stability and a government they could be a partner with. And I think what you saw yesterday at the investment summit was businesses recognising that now in the new government, they have a partner who is bringing stability, who they can work with to make investment happen. And the proof is in the pudding. We saw £60 billion of investment announced, 40,000 jobs, and it really shows that we're getting underway with our plans to get the economy growing.
That was nearly 59 billion, but that's a story for another day. The Conservatives said they left you with the fastest growing economy in the G7, with decreasing inflation and a sound outlook, including their own investment conference that brought in 30 billion, and Elon Musk came too.
Well, look, if you compare the last investment conference with this one, we've announced more than double the investment of the previous one. So I think you can see the difference that we're making already there. But, the idea that the Conservatives want to rewrite history and pretend that everything was fine under the previous government, I don't think will wash it with the British people, because people remember Liz Truss, people remember the damage the Conservatives did to the economy, and people know the shocking inheritance that we've had as a new government. And that's why the budget's going to be a difficult one, because we've had such a bad inheritance from the previous government. But what we're absolutely focused on is fixing the foundations, making sure we get economic stability back centre stage, and on that basis we can then grow the economy.
What do you think the former Google boss Eric Schmidt meant when he said he was surprised that Labour said it was in favour of growth?
I guess he meant that he was looking at the new government, and he may have had preconceptions about what to expect, but what he saw was something which he welcomed, which he can work with. He saw something that I think is very positive, which is that we want to work hand in hand with businesses to make sure that unnecessary regulation gets out of the way, to boost that investment and to get the economy growing. And that's where we as a government and businesses who want to invest have common cause.
Latest figures just out, pay growth slowed again. How should we interpret that?
Well, I think it's a sign of the difficult inheritance that we've had as a government, and the fact that the economy has been in a difficult position for a number of years. What we're focused on is what we can do now as a government to get us on a better track, and that's why the real focus of the budget is fixing the foundations, as I said, making sure we've got economic stability back in the heart of the Treasury, the heart of government, and on that foundation, on that bedrock, getting the economy growing by boosting investment, not least through the £60 billion which was announced yesterday.
And giving people a wonder drug so that they can lose weight, 21% of their body weight, and bound back to work.
Well, I think you're referring to the investment announced yesterday in some of the weight loss drugs. I mean, I think it's a really good example of where we can benefit from that investment in life sciences in the UK with a product that then helps people who want to lose weight, who have obesity. I think it's a good news story because it's one where we can get investment in the UK and help people to be healthy and get back to work. That's not to say, of course, that weight loss drugs are the only answer to being overweight. I think we also need to think about people's lifestyles, make sure that children have healthier habits as they're growing up. But I think that, obesity is a challenge in this country.
How big a crisis is it, people being unemployed? Because I'm just looking at the latest unemployment figures, steady at 4%. It is a little bit higher than before the pandemic, but not much, and 4%. Do we really need to start thinking about giving people jabs in order to get them back to work?
So I think the broader question in terms of the economy and people...
You're telling me what questions to ask?
No, sorry, I'm not. Absolutely not. I'm just putting in context.
Okay.
That figure is in the context of economic inactivity.
Okay.
So people who are sort of out of the job market altogether. So people who are long-term sick, people who are unable to work for various reasons. So actually, if you look at the overall picture, there are too many people who are long-term sick and out of work, and we need to make sure that those people, where they can work, can get back into work.
What if they choose not to have those injections?
Well, look, I think this is something for doctors to discuss with individual patients.
It's the Health Secretary that's selling it as the great wonder drug to us, both last night on Sophie's show and this morning in The Telegraph.
Well, I think for individual people, that's a discussion for their doctor. I think it's definitely not for me as a Treasury Minister to come and tell people how exactly to lose weight. But I think giving people the options is the right thing.
What you can do, though, is talk to me about national insurance. And your boss has given the biggest hint yet that employers are going to have to pay more national insurance. I know you're not going to tell me, but the suggestion is that it's a manifesto breach. If you do indeed raise national insurance for employers, is that a manifesto breach?
Well, the manifesto was very clear in that we would not raise taxes on working people, by which we meant national insurance, income tax and VAT. And it was really important for us to have that commitment in our manifesto, particularly given the context in which we went into the election, which was living standards having been squeezed under the previous government. And that's a commitment in our manifesto that we will stand by.
Are employers not working people too?
Well, look, the manifesto commitment, which is what we're talking about, focused on working people and about not increasing taxes on working people. Well, look, I'm not going to speculate more widely about the budget, but actually what
but would you not recognise employers as working people?
Well, what I'm saying, working people...
Don't tell my boss that.
Well, working people are people who are paying national insurance, paying income tax, and we want to make sure that we're not increasing taxes on working people, and that's our commitment. And when you talk about businesses more widely, you know, what I know a lot of businesses really welcomed at the Investment Summit yesterday was our commitment, restating the commitment in our manifesto to cap corporation tax at 25%, and that provides businesses with some of the stability they need.
Are you happy to break manifesto pledges if it means growing the economy?
Well, look, we're talking about maintaining our manifesto, which is to make sure we don't increase taxes on working people. We're talking about not increasing corporation tax, capping it at 25%.
Would you be happy to break a manifesto pledge in order to benefit the economy?
Well, look, we think that our manifesto supports economic growth. That's why our manifesto was centred around our top mission, which is to get the economy growing. So actually, by implementing our manifesto, we will get the economy growing because that's what a lot of our manifesto hangs around. Yeah,
Paul Johnson, who you know, of the Institute for Fiscal Studies, suggests that another penny on national insurance might generate an extra £16 billion. That'll go a long way to filling that black hole for you, wouldn't it?
Well, one thing I've discovered as a Treasury Minister is there's no shortage of people with ideas and advice and putting it out there in the papers and so on. So,
would you take that advice?
Well, look, as I said, there is no shortage of advice from Paul Johnson and many other people. These are all decisions which the Chancellor will take in the budget on October the 30th.
I know you want to talk to me about the housing crisis.
Yes, I would like to talk to you about the housing crisis because we know that the housing crisis is something that the government has to address. We know what a difficult situation that we've inherited. We've committed to 1.5 million homes over this Parliament. What we're talking about today is some of the first steps we're taking to get more homes built. So £68 million are going to remediate brownfield sites. So these are brownfield sites which are council-owned but need a bit of work to clean them up, put some infrastructure in and so on so that homes can be built. This is putting funding in to get those brownfield sites ready to develop homes on. And are these homes mainly for sale or rent or a mixture of the two? It'll depend on the local area and the planning policy. But I think what we need to do is make sure that we've got investment going in to get the land ready, but alongside that, reform the planning system so that the landowners, the people who are going to build the homes, can get those planning consents far quicker, because we know that a lot of development has been held up in recent years through planning. And so that's why the government's very keen on making sure mandatory housing targets are back in place, making sure there's a brownfield first policy within our planning development frameworks, and making sure that we can get those planning consents quicker, and so the developments don't get held back. How do you think my viewers should feel this morning about the suggestions that the former Chief of Staff from Downing Street directly intervened to make sure that Taylor Swift had blue light motorcade taking her to a concert? Well, look, as I understand it, that was an operational decision by the Met Police in terms of what happened there. Obviously, with a major event, there are going to be conversations with the government, but that decision ultimately was one for the police. The suggestion in this morning's newspapers is that the police were lent on by Sue Gray and/or people in Downing Street in order to make sure that this would happen, having originally said, no, she can't have it. Well, I'm not aware of what individual conversations... Does that pass the sniff test for you? Well, I don't know what conversations took place, and, there's a lot of speculation in the papers about a lot of things. But what I know from the Met Police is that they're very clear this was an operational decision, and that obviously the government will be involved in conversations about major events taking place in the capital, but ultimately that's an operational decision for the police. Did you go to a Taylor Swift concert? I've never been to a Taylor Swift concert.
You're not a big fan?
No.
No,
I mean,
okay.
that's really bad. I shouldn't say that. No.
What do you like,
What do I like?
music-wise?
To be honest, whenever I go running is usually when I listen to music, and I just put on whatever the running playlist is. So I get all sorts of things coming up to me that I don't know what they are normally, but I enjoy them.
OK, Billy Joel. Try a bit of Billy Joel,
Okay.
trust me.
Thanks for the tip.
You're very welcome. It's great to see you. Thanks
too.
so much indeed.